The clinking of silverware echoed across the dining room as laughter erupted from one corner of the long Christmas table. My family was all there, faces glowing from the warmth of the fireplace and the wine they had already begun pouring. Plates overflowed with roasted turkey, glazed ham, and casseroles stacked high. But none of it was mine. They had gone on without me. I stood silently in the doorway, watching my sister slice into the turkey I had cooked every single Christmas for the past 10 years. Her smug smile widened as relatives praised her. "You really outdid yourself this year." She didn't correct them, not once. The spotlight was hers now, and they loved her for it. No one noticed me. No one asked where I had been. That was the moment I realized I wasn't their family. I was their servant. And when I finally refused to play the part they'd written for me, they thought it would break me. But they had no idea what was coming. My name is Daniel, and if you had asked anyone in my family who kept Christmas alive year after year, they would have said my mother, or my sister, or maybe even my uncle with his ridiculous holiday sweaters. But the truth? It was me. I was the one up before dawn on Christmas Eve, brining turkeys, kneading dough, and scribbling out shopping lists with military precision. I was the one darting from oven to stovetop, flour dust clinging to my sleeves like snow, my hair damp from steam rising off pots of gravy and soup. And I never complained. Not once. Because deep down, I wanted what everyone else in that house seemed to have effortlessly: belonging. My family wasn't cruel in obvious ways. They didn't scream or slam doors. Their weapon was subtler: expectation. An unspoken rule that Daniel would handle it. "Daniel's the chef," they'd say, patting me on the back like it was a compliment. But it wasn't really a title. It was a leash. At first, I wore that title with pride. When I was younger, I'd help my grandmother peel apples for her famous pie. Her kitchen smelled like cinnamon and nutmeg, and she'd hum carols while I clumsily chopped. She'd wink and whisper, "One day, you'll be the heart of this family." I held on to that memory, that promise. But after she passed, the warmth left with her. What was once tradition became obligation. By my late 20s, Christmas became less about joy and more about performance. If the ham wasn't glazed just right, my father would mutter, "Your grandmother never burned the edges." If the stuffing was dry, my aunt would sigh dramatically, as if I had ruined the entire holiday. Meanwhile, my sister Laura could waltz in 3 hours late, carrying nothing but a tray of store-bought cookies, and be greeted like royalty. "You look stunning." "Oh, Laura, you're such a blessing to this family." And me? I was sweating in an apron, invisible. The unfairness stung, but I buried it, year after year. "Bite your tongue," I told myself. "Keep the peace." Until one night, the peace cracked. It was last Christmas Eve. I had been cooking for 12 straight hours. My hands were raw from scrubbing pots, my back sore from leaning over the counter. Finally, I carried out the crown jewel, the turkey, golden brown, juices hissing as I carved it. I set it on the table, proud despite my exhaustion. And then Laura laughed. "Wow, Daniel," she smirked loud enough for everyone to hear. "It only took you all day to do what I could have done in an hour with an air fryer." The room erupted in chuckles. Even my mother pressed a napkin to her lips, trying to stifle a grin. My chest burned. My hands clenched so tightly around the carving knife I thought it might snap. But I said nothing. I swallowed it down like I always did. That was the first sting. The moment I realized their love wasn't unconditional, it was transactional. And I was giving far more than I ever got back. What they didn't know, as they laughed at me, was that something inside me shifted that night. And once it shifted, there was no going back. After that Christmas, the laughter at my expense lingered longer than the smell of pine needles or the echo of carols. It became a shadow, following me through the year. I told myself maybe I was imagining things. Maybe the turkey comment was just a bad joke. But as months passed, the pattern only grew sharper. It wasn't just Christmas anymore. When Easter rolled around, guess who was expected to bake 3 pies and host brunch? Me. On the 4th of July, I found myself at the grill, sweating over burgers while everyone else lounged with cold drinks, complaining if the patties weren't medium rare enough. And Thanksgiving? That was practically my Super Bowl, a marathon of casseroles, stuffing, gravy, and rolls. Every holiday became the same story. My hands blistered, my clothes stained, my smile forced. And Laura? She didn't lift a finger. Instead, she leaned into her role as the golden child. She was the fun aunt who showed up in designer coats, bringing laughter and gossip. Laura lights up the room, they'd say, while I was stuck in the kitchen, my back to the world. The favoritism was impossible to ignore. When I asked for help setting the table, my father shook his head. "No one does it like you, Daniel." When I suggested we rotate cooking duties, my mother frowned. "Why ruin tradition?" Tradition. That word felt like a chain around my throat. The more I resisted, the tighter they pulled. One night in November, a month before Christmas, Laura made it worse. I had just finished a 12-hour shift at the restaurant where I worked as a sous chef. I dragged myself home, dreaming of sleep. My phone buzzed. A family group chat. Laura had sent a message. "Can't wait for Daniel's feast this Christmas. You really are our personal chef." Lucky us. The replies rolled in, laughing emojis, clapping hands. My uncle even wrote, "Don't forget the pecan pie this year." Not a single word asking if I wanted to cook. Not a single thank you. Just assumptions, piling higher and higher until I could barely breathe beneath them. That night I lay awake, staring at the ceiling. My chest was heavy, my stomach knotted. Sleep wouldn't come. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw their faces, smiling, joking, using me. My heart thudded like a drum, the kind you feel in your throat. I started snapping at coworkers. I burned dishes at the restaurant because my hands shook from exhaustion. I stopped answering friends' calls. Slowly, I was disappearing into the role they had carved out for me. And then, one night, as I sat slumped at the diner counter after my shift, an unexpected voice cut through my fog. "You look like someone carrying the whole world on your shoulders," the waitress said. She was new, maybe a year younger than me, with kind eyes and a tired smile. She slid a coffee my way without asking. I blinked at her, startled. "Guess that's what it feels like." She shrugged. "Well, sometimes the world doesn't deserve someone carrying it. Sometimes you gotta put it down." Her words landed heavier than she realized. That was the first time someone reminded me I wasn't alone. The weeks before Christmas felt like a storm building on the horizon. I could feel it in every phone call, every group text, every offhand comment from my parents. Laura, of course, fanned the flames. One night, my phone buzzed again. This time it was a voice message from her. I pressed play, and her syrupy voice filled the room. "Daniel, don't forget, Christmas dinner is at Mom and Dad's as usual. Everyone's expecting your famous turkey. I told them you'd handle everything. Honestly, I don't know how you do it all. You're like indispensable." Her tone dripped with false sweetness, but underneath, I heard it. The smug certainty that I'd obey. That was the moment I decided I wouldn't. I texted back one sentence. "I'm not cooking this year." The silence that followed was deafening. For 3 hours, no one replied. Then my father's message arrived. "Don't be ridiculous. It's tradition. The family depends on you." And with that, the storm broke. Calls poured in. My aunt accused me of being selfish. My cousin said I was ruining Christmas for the kids. Laura went further, calling a family meeting. Yes, a meeting at my parents' house. I walked in to find them seated around the living room like a jury. My mother clutched her rosary. My father sat stiffly with his hands folded, and Laura leaned back with a smirk that told me she thought she'd already won. "Daniel," she began, feigning concern, "we're worried about you. You seem unstable lately, overwhelmed. Maybe you're not thinking clearly." I stared at her, stunned. Unstable? She was painting me as some fragile mess, incapable of making choices. My father chimed in. We can't just cancel Christmas dinner. People are counting on us. You don't want to let the family down, do you? That word again. Us. As if they were the ones sweating in the kitchen year after year. For a moment I felt cornered. The weight of all those years of obligation pressed down on me. My hands trembled. But then something shifted. I reached into my bag and pulled out a folder I'd been quietly building for months. Inside were photos, receipts, and texts. Evidence. Proof of every year I had carried this family while others contributed nothing. Pages of grocery bills paid out of my own pocket. Screenshots of group messages where I was volunteered without consent. I set it on the coffee table. The slap of paper against wood echoed like a gavel. This, I said, my voice steady, is the truth. You've used me for years, and I'm done. Laura's smirk faltered for the first time. My father's jaw clenched. My mother whispered a prayer. For a moment, I thought maybe, just maybe, they'd understand. But instead, Laura laughed, cold, sharp, dismissive. You really think anyone cares about your little scrapbook? She sneered. You're nothing without us, Daniel. Nothing. Her words cut deep, but I didn't flinch. Because for the first time in my life, I knew she was wrong. They thought they still had control, I whispered to myself later that night. They didn't. After that meeting, Christmas became less about holiday cheer and more about battle lines. Laura wasted no time rallying the troops. She twisted the story, painting me as ungrateful and erratic. Soon, whispers reached me from every direction. A cousin texted, Laura says you've been acting off. Are you okay? My aunt left a voicemail dripping with pity. Daniel, maybe you need help. It's not normal to hate family. I didn't hate them. I just refused to be their servant anymore. But Laura was clever. She knew if she painted me as unstable, people would stop listening to me. The rumors spread like wildfire. At work, even my coworkers joked, You skipping Christmas dinner this year, chef? They didn't realize how much it stung. Nights grew longer, my apartment colder. I could feel the family trying to push me back into line with guilt and shame. But instead of breaking me, their pressure hardened something inside. I began documenting everything. Every text, every voicemail, every innocent comment. I built a digital archive, labeling files like evidence for a trial. The folder grew thicker, heavier, until it felt like armor. The waitress from the diner, her name was Emily, became my sounding board. She'd sit across from me on slow nights, listening without judgment. You don't have to prove anything to them, she told me once, stirring her coffee. I know, I replied, but I want the truth ready. Because when the day comes, and it will, I won't just walk away. I'll make sure they can never twist it again. She studied me, then nodded. Then fight smart. Not just hard. Her words lit something in me. For years I'd been reacting, playing defense. Now I began to plan. I started small. When family members called to pressure me, I responded calmly, almost cheerfully. No, I won't be cooking this year. But I hope you enjoy yourselves. Their frustration grew each time I refused to argue. It unnerved them. Meanwhile, Laura's mask began to crack. She tried organizing a potluck dinner to replace me, but no one else stepped up. Casseroles were burned, the turkey undercooked. My uncle complained, It just isn't the same without Daniel. Laura snapped at him, her voice sharp enough to silence the room. For the first time, the cracks showed. And through those cracks, I saw the truth. Laura needed me. Her golden child status wasn't built on her own shine. It was built on my labor. Without me, her throne crumbled. The symbolic folder of evidence sat on my desk, glowing like a beacon. Every time I added another page, another screenshot, I felt stronger. Christmas was coming. And so was the reckoning. Christmas Day arrived like a stage set for a play I no longer belonged to. My parents' house glowed with twinkling lights, candles flickering in frosted windows. Laughter spilled out into the cold night air, warm and inviting, at least on the surface. Inside, chaos simmered beneath the surface. The kitchen was a disaster: burnt rolls, half-cooked turkey, gravy that looked more like water than sauce. The air was thick with tension, plates clattered, voices rose in frustration. I walked in quietly, holding the folder tucked beneath my arm. The room stilled. Forks froze midair. My mother's face brightened with forced relief. "Daniel, thank God. We knew you'd come through." I shook my head slowly. "I'm not here to cook." A silence heavier than stone fell over the table. Laura stood at the head, dressed like she was hosting a magazine shoot. Perfect hair, sparkling earrings. Her smirk was ready, but her eyes flickered with unease. "Oh, please," she scoffed. "Here to play the victim again?" "We've already made dinner, Daniel. We don't need you." I set the folder on the table and opened it. Papers fanned out like cards in a magician's trick. Receipts, screenshots, bank statements. Proof of every sacrifice, every expectation, every time I'd been used and dismissed. "I'm not the victim," I said, voice calm, steady. "I'm the record keeper." The room was silent except for the faint ticking of the grandfather clock. My father leaned forward, jaw tight. "What is this?" "The truth," I replied. "For years, I've carried this family. You all called it tradition. But it wasn't tradition. It was exploitation. I bought the food, cooked the meals, cleaned the dishes, while you," I looked at Laura, "took the credit." Gasps rippled across the table. Laura's hands trembled as she reached for a wineglass, her knuckles pale. "Lies," she spat, though her voice cracked. "You're just bitter. You always wanted attention." I cut her off, sliding a photo forward. Laura smiling, holding up my turkey at last year's dinner, captioned on her Instagram, "My masterpiece." The color drained from her face. Allies I hadn't expected began to shift. My uncle muttered, "Wait, that was yours?" My cousin frowned. "He's right. He does do everything." Laura's control slipped, her empire of favoritism crumbling with every page of proof I laid down. Finally, I looked up, meeting every eye around the table. My voice didn't shake. "I don't want apologies. I don't want pity. I want change. And if you can't give me that, then this is the last Christmas you'll see me at this table." The silence that followed was deafening. My mother clutched her rosary tighter, whispering prayers. My father looked away, ashamed. "And Laura?" She collapsed into her chair, the smirk gone, replaced by something raw and ugly. Fear. The truth had detonated like a bomb, and nothing would ever be the same. The days after Christmas felt different, like the air itself had shifted. For the first time in years, I woke up without an alarm set for baking or roasting. No grocery lists taped to the fridge. No endless scrubbing of pans. Instead, I brewed coffee slowly, savoring the quiet. The sun poured through my apartment window, golden and unhurried. I thought maybe I'd feel guilty, walking away, dropping the truth like a stone into still water. But instead, what I felt was lighter, freer. The fallout, however, rippled through the family like aftershocks. My father called once, his voice low and heavy. "You embarrassed us," he said. "But maybe we needed it." Then he hung up before I could answer. My mother didn't call at all. She sent a letter instead. Handwritten, trembling words on lined paper. She spoke of her fear of family falling apart, of her guilt for letting tradition turn into chains. At the end, she wrote, "I don't know how to fix it, but I want to try." And Laura's silence was deafening. But I heard from others. My cousin texted, "She snapped at everyone after you left. Blamed us for taking your side. People are starting to see her for who she really is." The golden child's crown was slipping, and there was nothing she could do to stop it. Meanwhile, I began building something new. Emily, the waitress who had once told me to put the world down, became more than a friend. We spent evenings cooking together, but this time it was different. We laughed, we experimented, we burned a few dishes and ordered pizza instead. Cooking wasn't a duty anymore. It was joy again. One night, I pulled out the old folder, the one filled with proof of years of exploitation. I emptied it, page by page, into a shoebox. Then I sealed the lid and wrote across the top in thick black marker, "Past, do not reopen." But I kept one thing out. A single photo of me as a boy, standing beside my grandmother in her kitchen, both of us dusted in flour, smiling like the world was perfect. I framed it and set it on my counter, right where I could see it every morning. That photo became my new tradition, a reminder that love in the kitchen was meant to be shared, not demanded. Months passed, and with them, healing. My family began to shift in small ways. Easter came and went, and for the first time, they held dinner without me. It wasn't perfect. They burned the ham, forgot the rolls, but they managed. And more importantly, no one called me. Laura tried to regain her footing, posting perfect photos online, bragging about store-bought meals as though they were her own. But the comments weren't the same anymore. People noticed. The cracks in her facade had widened. And me? I found peace. Standing in my own kitchen one evening, I stirred a pot of soup while Emily chopped vegetables beside me. The smell of garlic and onions filled the air, warm and comforting. For the first time, I wasn't cooking to prove anything. I was cooking because I wanted to. I smiled to myself, realizing something. This wasn't the end. It was the beginning. Maybe you've been there too. Maybe you've been the one carrying the weight while everyone else took the credit. Maybe you've felt invisible in your own family, your worth measured only by what you could give. If so, I want you to hear me clearly. You are not alone. They thought breaking me would be simple. They thought my silence meant surrender. But what they didn't understand is that worth isn't something they hand out at the table. It's something you claim for yourself. So, I'll ask you, have you ever faced favoritism, betrayal, or the crushing weight of unfair expectations? How did you rise above it? Share your story in the comments. Someone out there needs to hear it. Because the truth is simple. The moment you stop living for their approval is the moment you start living free.